Hello, and welcome to Cooking with Todd. This is Todd. For today's video, I am making quick pickled onions. This is also really good with carrots or beets or really anything you'd want to pickle. So, when I make this, I typically split it 50-50. I'll do half or one jar, and I'm using wide mouth pint jars because my weights I use fit perfectly within the jar. So I typically do one jar of carrots and then one jar of sliced onions, and I like to use red onions. And I like to slice mine in half, and then I cut the root end off and I slice it from the sprout to the root end. Or you can do it the other way and make the rings kind of like this. But I personally prefer my rings a little on the longer, flatter side. So that's how I cut mine. And for the matchstick, or for the carrots, I like to use matchstick carrots. Just store-bought matchstick carrots. Nothing really special. Yeah, I know they're more expensive to buy them like that, but it's just a convenience. I don't really make the carrots that often. So, but today I'm only going to be doing red onions. So I have 3 red onions here that I have sliced up. Then you're going to need, per every jar, 4 sprigs of dill and 1 clove of garlic and 1/2 teaspoon of red pepper flake. If you want to have that, go right ahead. If you want to admit it, that's fine too. I kind of like mine just a tad on the spicy side. Then you are going to need 650 milliliters of water. That is going to be 2 2/3 cups. Then you're going to need 300 milliliters of white vinegar and 300 milliliters of apple cider vinegar. That is going to be 1 1/4 cups. Then you're going to need 4 teaspoons of salt and 1 tablespoon of sugar. And I have a jar here of what's left of some of my pickled onions I did last weekend, and there's nothing left in here. These lasted maybe 3 days. I got a couple hamburgers out of them and a couple grilled hot dogs that I did last weekend, and this is so much better than just regular onions in my opinion. So I'm going to recycle this brine and add that into the brine that I'm making. So on my stove I have me a small Dutch oven. Let me go ahead and switch that over right there. And there is a little bit of oil in this since this is a regular seasoned cast iron Dutch oven here. It's just oil from that I put in there after I wash it like you're supposed to. So I'm not really too worried about that. But I already have my distilled water, and yes, I am using distilled water. I do not like to use city water. It's just my personal preference. But I already have the water in here, and I have my distilled vinegar already in there. I'm going to go ahead and measure out my apple cider vinegar here. And of course I'm 50 milliliters short. Alright, and there's my apple cider vinegar. I'm going to go ahead and get my salt measured in. And to make this just a little easier, I'm going to do a teaspoon and a tablespoon. Since a tablespoon is just 3 teaspoons. And going to go ahead and add in my tablespoon. And since this batch here was kind of like my original trial run for this, I thought that was just a little too acidic, so I'm going to add in an extra tablespoon this around. But this recipe now is refined, so you won't need to do that. Going to go ahead and set those to the side. I'm going to grab my ½ teaspoon measuring spoon there. And since I am recycling that, I'm going to put it through a strainer just to get anything out of it. And I'm going to rinse that out with just a little more distilled water. A little extra brine won't hurt. But as you can see, there is probably maybe 5 pieces of onion left in here. But these here are garlic. Yeah, so that was all gone pretty much. And I am going to just grab a rubber spatula here. These are fairly new pans, or pots I should say. I don't really want to damage the seasoning that I've been working hard to get onto these things, since we all know factory seasoning is pretty much not the best. So I'm going to try and bring this up to a very light simmer. And while that is doing that, I'm going to move my camera angle back down to my counter and start packing my jars. Alright, so I am going to just throw in my onions like so, and try and find any pieces that are still stuck together and break those apart as you add them. Just kind of helps the pickling process out a little bit. And I personally like to fill my jars half full to start. It'd be nice if I wouldn't drop them all on the floor. Alright, and I'm going to pack my jars just a little bit. I don't really have a wood tamper, but I do have a long rolling pin. So I'm going to kind of move this out of the way. I'm just going to tamp this in my jar. I'm not really going crazy here. Like that. That's good enough. And I'm going to go ahead and add in my dill. And dill is not in season in my area, so I don't have any homegrown fresh dill right now. I added 3 small sprigs in there, so I'm going to constitute that as 1. So there's 3. And I'm going to say that right there is 4. And I got 3 more left here. And I'm just kind of doing that. Going to open my last one here. That one's kind of small, so I'll just do 2. Oh man, I love the smell of fresh dill. I must say, you can really taste the dill in these, and I absolutely love it. Oh, why did I close that up? I'm not done yet. That one's kind of small, so I'll constitute that as a half. Alright, so that's 2. There's 3. I'll just finish it off. Make that 4. Now I might end up getting an extra jar out of this, which I will not complain. This will be eaten up in no time. So I'm just going to measure in the red pepper flake there. Now when I first made this, I used a pinch, and I'm going to say that was probably about an 1/8 to 1/4 teaspoon, somewhere in between an 1/8 and 1/4. Really wasn't enough for me, so I upped it to half in this batch, and I'm hoping that is enough. So I got that there, and I have a bulb here of some homegrown garlic. I don't think that really focused. There you go. Which, unfortunately, I think I only have 1 bulb left from this year. So, I'm happy I used a couple bulbs to replant in the fall. Man, is that, oh, that's too close. Like, it was all stuck together, and I normally look at the root to kind of tell if it's 1 or 2 or not. Yeah, this right here is typically the size of clove for my garlic, so I guess you could say it's 1 clove. It looks like it just kind of, because this side is 1. This is weird. Now this is 1 clove of garlic. I can't really separate that. It just, I don't know. It's weird. Alright, so how I do this, grab my knife right quick, is I like to cut the root end off. Then I just kind of cut it up into thirds. As you've seen in my last batch, I cut it up into thirds, but I'm going to kind of cut this up just a little more. Yeah, that was definitely 1 clove. That was really weird. I don't know why it did that. And it looks like this bulb here is kind of on the older side. I guess I've been not rotating them like I thought I was. I normally put my older cloves in the front, newer ones in the back. Or bulbs, I should say, not cloves. Alright, so this water here, not quite simmering yet, but I can tell it's very close. So I'm going to go ahead and just get the last of this here packed into my jars. And this top layer, I'm not packing like I am the bottom. I'm just trying to get as much in these as I can. When these are all done, they're not going to be in these jars anymore. I'm going to put them in a quart jar. I don't have any wide mouth quart jars, so I can't really use that for this. It looks like I'm going to have just enough here. Alright, that's all of them. That is now empty. I just want to make sure that my weight here pushes down fairly far. I want it to be below the top of the glass. And it is going to have some resistance and it's going to want to pop back up. Just try to keep it below the top of the jar. Alright. Take those back out. Alright, this is practically simmering. I can see some bubbles coming up to the surface. So I am going to grab my ladle. Ah, there it is. I was looking for my measuring cup here and couldn't find it. I was looking everywhere. Alright, so here is that. The color for this is just from the last batch. I'm going to go ahead and fill it up just when I start to notice it starts to rise like that. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and add in my weights. And I'm going to fill the top of that just a little bit with some extra brine. And I do got quite a bit of brine left. I think it's mainly because I filled these jars more than I did last time when I made this. So theoretically, the amount of brine I have, I should be able to get. I am going to kind of, it's a little too hot, so push that weight down a little bit. And that's why I have it on here. That way it has something to overflow on. I'm going to take the weight out and just use this rubber spatula here. And when this is all done here, it's going to sit at room temp until it comes down to room temp. So once it's done, which is going to be about an hour, maybe 2, maybe 3, just whenever I can get back around to it. Just trying to get the brine down to the bottom there as much as I can. And my hands are clean, so I'm not worried about touching this or anything. I always use antibacterial soap, but something I picked up from work is I like to use hand sanitizer after drying my hands. So it's kind of like a 2-for-1 there. Alright, so this here is going to go ahead and sit at room temp until these cool down to right around room temp. I typically just let them sit here for a couple hours, and then I'll come back and do whatever I need to do. So I'm just going to let these sit here, and I will be back whenever I decide to go ahead and get these finished up. Alright, so I am back, and it is now the next day. I ended up completely forgetting about this. But after I stopped recording, I took my cake pan here, and I just kind of turned it upside down and put it over it, just to keep anything out of them. And this was an unintentional mistake on my pan. I ended up putting it on my grill, and it completely covered the bottom of it in smoke residue, and some of the coating flaked off, but that's fine. I just use that on the grill solely now. So but these have been sitting overnight, like I said, and I am going to go ahead and grab my weights out, and as you can see, my onions now stay under the liquid. I was wanting to go back in. There's a couple here that are wanting to float up to the top, but that's fine. They'll end up in the bottom anyways. So I have 2 quart jars here. I would prefer these to be wide mouth, but I don't have any wide mouth quart jars because I only use this for tomato sauce. I only use quart jars really for tomato sauce and chili, which the chili is in quite a bit of liquid, so it's not really thick, so it comes out of the jar fairly easy. So I have never really seen a good reason to get wide mouth jars, but I am going to end up buying a case of those strictly for stuff like this. So I'm going to get my canning funnel here, and I'm just going to take these and just dump everything right in, and anything that's left in the jar, I'll just take a rubber spatula here and just kind of push everything into my quart jar here. And my countertops are clean, so I'm not really worried about them falling off and me putting them back in. But if you remember, the color of the liquid was completely different. I have my extra brine here in a pint-sized jar. I'm going to transfer that over into this to make it easier to pour. And I'm going to top this off. I'm going to top it off to about 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch headspace. And I'm going to just shake the jar, get everything moved around, get that new brine incorporated. And there is one. Now I wish I would have done 4 jars because I got an extra jar now, and that ended up being just enough brine for 2 quart jars. So I actually kind of like how I did this in the pint-sized jars here, and it ended up being just the perfect amount to have this loosely fitted in here and everything. And for the lid that I'm going to keep this in the refrigerator for, I'm just using a regular reusable canning jar storage lid, whatever you want to say. And I do have some of these. These are just middle ones, and they have a rubber gasket. The ones for my regular mouth jars actually has a pop seal indicator. If it's popped up, it's been opened. Those ones I actually use for like long-term storage for like coffee and stuff like that, where I put oxygen absorbers in, and it creates a vacuum inside. So I use those as an indicator, like, hey, this jar's been opened, or this jar has a failed seal. That's what I use those for, and I actually like the middle compared to the plastic for that. So, but for this, that's just going in the fridge for a week or so, or a month, however long this will last. It will be just fine. Kind of forgetting this. So I'm going to go ahead and just add this right in here. And I actually might end up just doing another jar later on tonight or something to add in to this one to finish filling it up. OCD. I'm going to go ahead and take this brine here. Just dump that into there. And this is pretty much done. But these are, I think I've already said, they're really good on hamburgers, good on hot dogs, good on sausage, or even just on like salad. They're really good. And I'm going to actually taste this. So if I taste some of the brine here, I'm just looking to see how acidic this is, how spicy. Alright, so that's, wrong lid. That's definitely spicier than the last batch. I like it at that point. I might end up taking just a little more of the crushed red pepper out the next time I make this. The acidity, so still a little on the too acidic side for me, and after looking at my recipe, I have noticed, compared to my last one, why I ended up with so much extra brine. So the last time I made this, I ended up with about 125 milliliters of excess brine, which that's going to be about a half a cup. So I thought that I fixed that in this recipe in my final version. However, I did not. Next time I make this, I'm going to have the white vinegar and apple cider vinegar that I used in this recipe. So I'll do 150 of white vinegar, 150 of apple cider vinegar, and that should bring the acidity down quite a bit. And I'm not really looking to preserve this long term. Like I said, this is going to be refrigerated, so the acidity, it matters, but it doesn't matter for preservation purposes. So trying to think if I'm forgetting anything on this. I thought this was going to be a quick, easy video, but it's turning out to be like a 30-minute video before editing. So and these are good in the refrigerator for a couple of months. I'm going to say about 3 to 4 months in the refrigerator. The longer they sit, the better they get. Unfortunately, the last time I made these, I only made 1 jar worth, and I think they were gone in like 3 days. But by the time I got to it on the 3rd day, they were so much better than the first day I used them. But you'll want to let these sit in the refrigerator at least 24 hours before you use them. Since I forgot these and left them sitting out at room temp for, I'm going to say, about 8 to 10 hours, I'd just refrigerate these until chilled, then they'll be good to go. So, yeah, I'm just going to wrap this video up. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to smash that like button. If you enjoy the content I'm putting out, make sure to smash that subscribe button. And as always, thank you for coming along with me on this journey of mine.